Hello. In this podcast, we take a look at how to write a good query letter. The first thing to know is that a typical agent gets tons and tons of query letters on a daily basis. So you have to make yours stand out from the rest. And the first thing that you can do to help that is to be aware of proper formatting. If you don't format the letter properly, that simply states, basically spells out I'm an amateur and not professional, and the agent's simply going to throw your letter in the trash. So it's important to be aware of proper formatting. And how to do that? Well, your address and your contact information should be at the top of the letter and centered. And when we say contact information, we're talking about not just your address, but also email address and phone number. After that, 2 spaces down, also centered, put the date that you're writing the letter. After that, 2 spaces down, now flush left on the left-hand side, the recipient's name and address goes there. Then 2 spaces down, and you say Dear Mr. or Dear Ms. And 2 things to note here. The person that you're writing to, if she's female, and even if you know that she's married, proper business code states that you should state Ms. rather than Mrs. Even if you know that she's married, make sure that you put Ms. And then also, you might be familiar with the way that you do emails. You would typically put the person's name and then a comma. Well, again, business code states that you don't do that. In the business world, you would put a colon after that. And then from here on out, you're going to do the body of the letter, and it's going to be in block format, meaning that you don't indent the paragraphs. Each time that you conclude a paragraph, you simply hit return twice, and you start the next line flush left. You don't indent. Now, the body of the letter, maybe the single most important thing in the whole letter is what we call the opening sizzle line. You don't want to start the letter by saying, Dear so-and-so, I am responding to your ad for blah, blah, blah. That's typically amateur, that's redundant. The agent's going to know that obviously that's what you're looking for representation. You don't need to start by saying like I am writing in response to. Start with an opening sizzle line. So for example, you want to start with what we call a hook to hook the reader's attention, the agent's attention. So what if you were drowning in a pool and all of a sudden you realize you didn't know how to swim? Now, I'm just making that up as a hypothetical, but you get the idea. You want to start with something that will hook the reader's attention, that gets their attention and holds their interest right away. You want to keep the content simple and short. In other words, get to the point. As mentioned, the agents will typically get tons and tons of letters on a daily basis. They have lots to read. They don't want to read letters that are tangential and that are extraneous and provide all these details. They want to keep it short. They want you to keep it short and simple. Get to the point. Clearly explain what your content is and what the selling points are. You would also want to include a brief paragraph or at least a couple sentences about your background and your credentials. Explain why you are a good authority on this material, what makes you unique. And then at the end, you want to thank them and close with your name and your signature. So to conclude, what separates the good letters from the not so good ones? The first thing is, of course, as we mentioned, to format correctly. If you don't format correctly, if you have the addresses reversed, for example, that just screams amateur, and they're not going to take you seriously, and they will be more likely to just simply throw your letter away right then and there without even reading it. Second thing here is be free of errors. Make sure that you proofread, that you maybe have your friends proofread the letter before you send it. Because think about it, if you're trying to get an agent to represent you and your book is going to be, let's say, hundreds of pages, and you can't even write a single one-page query letter without typos, or if you have typos in there, what is that going to say for the rest of your book? So it's very, very important to make sure that you don't have any errors on that query letter, and then clearly articulate the selling points and what makes your book, your product, unique. And if you can do these things, then you can write a very good query letter.